Do you want to live forever? Most human beings, when asked this question, would not hesitate to say yes. They yearn for immortality. Why this almost desperate grasp at eternity? Death is scary. It is the unknown. It is the great end. And we always want to stay with the known. We want comfort while fearing non-existence. We see life as this ongoing melody, and we fear that silence might be its final note. But what if silence is not just its final note, but also its first one? What if silence is not just the first and last notes, but also in between all the melodic notes? We want to live forever. But you cannot eternalize the physical body. You cannot eternalize the mind. No. You must find yourself already as timeless, as the unborn, as the silence before, after, and in between. Everything that was born has to die. Nothing endures, nothing lasts forever. Everything that breathes life will eventually meet death. Each encounter has the inevitability of departure. Each creature carries the seed of its own unmaking. Creation, dissolution, the ongoing dualistic cycle of life and death. They are not enemies. They are dancers that have never been separate. Immortality, deathlessness is never about continuity. No. It's about discontinuity, utter and absolute discontinuity from manifestation. This discontinuity often occurs when you faint, when you are deeply asleep, in deep dreamless sleep, or when someone undergoes general anesthesia. Even though the shift from the natural state to the universal state is a question of refinement, expansion, and further attunement with the light of pure awareness, the shift from the universal state to the absolute state has nothing to do with it. It's not about refinement, but about reducing and even extinguishing the residual fabrication, even the impersonal fabrication, and any trace of conceptualization, even to presence or universality in its extreme sattvic qualities. It's about metaphorically dying while alive. It's about the complete dissolution of all remnants. From the universal state on, it's not so much about wanting to get rid of suffering or achieving happiness and love, because those have been fulfilled. But the light of awareness fades in deep dreamless sleep, in the so-called unconscious states. So this is a clue that there's still something to unveil, something to realize, something to embody. Beyond the breath of life and death, beyond the dance of creation and dissolution, beyond the dichotomy of potentiality and actuality, there is an unfathomable isness. This isness is the unknowable, undescribable that some non-dual traditions call the absolute, and that I also refer to as unmanifest. The absolute is beyond perception or non-perception, self or non-self, duality or non-duality, separation or oneness, somethingness or nothingness, and background and foreground. It is beyond what we understand as being or non-being, existing or non-existing, consciousness or unconsciousness. It is beyond being known because it's not something that can be experienced or stored in memory. It's purely ungraspable and inconceivable and just cannot be adequately conveyed through words. To fully experience the absolute, it's to dissolve into its unknowable mystery. You will never be in the absolute. There's no one who has ever been in the absolute or entered into the absolute, because it's not a dimension or a space that subsumes everything. There are no persons there, nothing there. There's no feeling of existence, no presence, no universal being there. Imagine totally disappearing from existence, just vanishing and then coming back. For you, what happened in that gap, in that discontinuity? You don't know. You may know that you don't know, but that's not the absolute. This knowledge is often interpreted as awareness of nothingness, or awareness of absence. But this is incorrect because this light of knowing only occurs in manifestation. It's just a mental construct, a subtle fabrication, a retrospective recognition. There is no knowledge or light of knowing in the unmanifest. In other words, the absolute is beyond knowingness and beyond remembrance and prior to recognition. To know something, there has to be a knower and a known. But the absolute is beyond subject and objects. It is beyond any form of self-reference. It is the lightless light, the unlit light. Even saying that it is the source of everything is not correct. Even calling it the field of potentiality, ripe with infinite possibility, is already too concrete, too defined. It's not that. Yeah, you can call it sourceless source if you like, but it's beyond that as well. It is not eternal. It is beyond the dimension of time. It is timeless, even though timelessness is merely a concept that arose in the dimension of time. It is ineffable silence beyond silence, stillness beyond stillness, peace beyond peace. It cannot be imagined, it cannot be fabricated, and it cannot be conceptualized. To dive deeper into the mystery of reality and ultimately dissolve into the unmanifested, unconditional surrender is fundamental. This type of surrender is so profound that words cannot do justice, and it will challenge the very edges of your lingering attachments, your potential subtle yearnings, and everything you know. If I ask an iceberg to surrender, and only the tip of the iceberg hears it, which is the part the iceberg is conscious of, only about 10% of the iceberg will be able to surrender. But the vast majority of the iceberg needs to rise to the surface to be able to unconditionally surrender. It must expose itself to the full sunlight. Only then can it melt away. Through conscious dissolution, as you go on the edge of absorptions into the unmanifested, you may experience the existential fear or fear of death. This is expected, but you'll not be literally annihilated. No, what vanishes has never been you. You will only non-conceptually discover what has always been there, behind the illusion of a self, even a universal one. People believe that life is for doing and death is for non-doing. Rest in peace is only for the dead. The living must do, and do. That's why religions and even spiritual traditions, they promise eternal peace and fulfillment. In heaven, in moksha, in nirvana, in the afterlife. But isn't it ever now? It's always now, will always be in the now. And the deepest you can be in the now is when you are in undoing. And throughout this process, when you face the unfindability of the now abider just vanishes. Forever? That's up to you in grace. In pure non-doing, you are in the absolute, utterly at peace, timeless rest. There are no desires about heaven, moksha, nirvana, etc. there. And once you truly realize and embody this understanding, you can move, you can dance, you can sing, you can breathe. All things become possible while being fully grounded in pure non-doing, fully grounded in the absolute. This is the absolute state. It's not just dissolution or cessation. It's not just an awakening or realization. It is the embodiment of unfathomable, non-conceptual wisdom that surpasses all understanding. You are a window in manifestation for the absolute. You are a window in manifestation for the nameless reality. To be in the absolute state, it's not just something that others do not accept. It is truly, truly being something that they cannot even imagine.